Hi, I'm Greg Lefebvre, creator and host of the Compulsive Storyteller podcast. Welcome to another segment of Pass the Mic, where we invite talented guests, artists, writers, actors, musicians, and others to join us on the pod to tell a great story and to chat with me about the art of storytelling. I'm excited to introduce today's guest, Adam Macias. Adam is a comedian, award-winning audio producer, and popular content creator. He's behind the new podcast, That Was Wild, a show where wild stories are as unpredictable as they are hilarious. Welcome to Pass the Mic from the Compulsive Storyteller podcast. I really enjoyed That Was Wild. You have great energy and enthusiasm, and you're very funny.
Thank you so much, Greg. I'm really excited for this. So I'm going to try to bring all that to this show right now.
Great, fantastic. So you have a story. Does it have a title?
Yeah, I would say the Adams Truman Show.
You have the floor whenever you want to start.
Yeah, okay. So this story is about a wild mushroom trip that changed my life for the good, but it was very bad at first. But in order to tell the story, I'm going to rewind a little bit, but I just wanted to give you a little teaser there.
Got it.
When I was 17 years old, my mother asked me if I thought her and my dad should get a divorce. She phrased it as, "What do you think I should do?" She had just gotten back from serving him divorce papers. Her hair was drenched with rain and she was crying. And because no one likes to see their mother cry, I told her, "I think you should do whatever makes you happy." And if you knew anything about my mom and dad's relationship at the time, you would know how damning that statement was, because I would not describe my parents' marriage as happy. So subsequently, the divorce papers were finalized on June 27th, 2005. It was also my 18th birthday. I have this old journal from that time. Here's what I wrote that day. June 27th, 2005. I had 2 parties this year. My mom gave me money, and my dad gave me this old notebook. I can't wait till Christmas. I was already looking forward to 2 Christmases. Everything was on the up and up, but I think I was secretly sad at this moment. I don't remember if my involvement with drugs and alcohol had started before or after that night, but I think that's because of all the drugs and alcohol I had taken that night. I had started taking a lot of drugs and alcohol. I stopped trying to pursue my dreams. I wanted to be a musician. I never responded to any of my college acceptance letters. Instead, what I decided to do that summer after I graduated high school, I backpacked around Europe. And here's another one of my journal entries from that time. July 10th, 2005. It's my second day in Amsterdam. We had to walk through the red light district to get to our hostel yesterday.
Right, speaking of drugs, yeah.
Yeah, I've been drinking since noon, and I'm going to go watch a sex show. The weed is amazing here. I love being an adult. I was really soaking it up, if you will. When I got back, I rented an apartment with my pothead friends, and I worked at an Olive Garden. I mostly drank and smoked pot, but after a while, I started doing psychedelics, more specifically mushrooms. And it was about my 3rd time when I doing mushrooms, when I had a bad trip for the first time. And if you've ever had a bad trip, they can range from ooh, spooky to all mental breakdown. And
I had it was artificial mescaline, and it was really a horse tranquilizer.
Yes.
And I thought my whole body was melting.
Yes.
Awful experience.
Yeah. So this time I blacked out or something, because I only remember bits and pieces from the night. I actually tried journaling some of it, which is something, a lot of people say to do. And so this is actually what I wrote from that night. Mind is moving hella fast. By the way, I'm from NorCal, if you can't tell. I use hella all the time. So mind is moving hella fast. I've never felt this way before. Breakthrough. Welcome to your existence. And all over the cover and stuff, I tried to write in a very scribbly hand, I will remember, I will remember. Unfortunately, I didn't write down what I wanted to remember. I just wrote, hey, remember this. I don't know.
That's familiar story.
Which is, yeah, I don't know why I did that. You ever try to like write down something, but instead of like, you don't have time to write down the whole thought, you're just like, hey, write down this. Well, apparently I did that for an entire spiritual revelation. I just couldn't be bothered for it. So I woke up the next afternoon, and yeah, I meant to say afternoon for sure. Like I wasn't an early riser after this trip. I woke up around like 2 p.m., but I felt off. Like somehow I was like, I don't know, I just felt like a different person. And like anybody, a pothead, I did a little wake and bake to see if I could get back to my normal rhythm. And that's when this terrible kind of paranoia happened to me. It felt like I was, drowning underwater. I felt consumed by it. And I realized later that I had a panic attack. And that feeling, weirdly, after this mushroom trip kind of never went away. In fact, it kind of intensified. It became this like constant feeling of dread. And shortly after that, I started to hear voices, whispers,
Wow, yeah.
really.
Yep.
I don't know if you ever like, I don't know. After a conversation, I would hear people whisper about me under their breath, like, oh, like what an idiot or something like that. And I knew immediately like that, hey, that's new. Like, so it had to do with this bad trip. So as if I was some sort of scientist, I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to get myself out of this, try to reverse this by taking more mushrooms. It's like that classic saying of like the only way out is in. Well, I kind of did a different version of that where the only way out is to trip more out. I tried to take more mushrooms.
You're still in Europe?
No, oh no, I'm back home in this is in Roseville, back now. So turns out taking more drugs to cure your psychosis is not a good idea. Because it got worse. The last time I had one of these trips, I wrote it down on March 23rd, 2007. I have this in my journal. I wrote down my roommates, coworkers, friends, and even my own brother have been conspiring against me. I have thought this to be paranoia for some time, but the evidence will lie in tonight. And at this point, I didn't trust anybody in my life. But for some reason, that did not stop me from taking mushrooms with a very large group of people. I don't trust you, but I'm going to trip out with you. I don't know what I was thinking. I ended up becoming even more paranoid and isolated myself in a bathroom. And I did manage to write down this experience. And it, unfortunately, trigger warning, it does read like a suicide note. It says, my name is Adam Robert Macias, born June 27th, 1987. Ready for anything except nothing at all. Goodbye. And I don't know. I guess I would consider myself a witty poet when I was mushrooming out. But essentially, I had become convinced that we all lived in this kind of fake reality, and the only way to wake up from it was to die. So, for whatever reason that night, I decided to drown myself in a toilet bowl. I don't know why I chose a toilet bowl. I mean, I was
the ultimate.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate in a way.
But I was in a bathroom. I don't want to like say there's good ways to do this, but there's literally so many options to choose to unalive yourself in a bathroom, and I probably chose the most painful and definitely the most unhygienic.
And probably ineffective too. I mean,
Oh yeah,
there's not much liquid there to drown yourself in.
I would have had to like force myself to do it, and maybe it was just a cry. I think it was ultimately just cry for help or some weird mushroom fantasy. But luckily, my roommate, he burst in because apparently he had to go to the bathroom real bad, and I was like taking the only bathroom in the apartment. I tried to tell him like, oh no, like I was just throwing up, but he actually didn't believe me, fortunately. And we ended up staying and talking in that bathroom for the rest of the night. I always think about this, but I really do owe him my life. Shout out to Lane. And during that conversation, I realized I needed help. So after that night, I decided to go to a therapist for the first time, which is really hard to do. When you're crazy, it's actually very hard to admit you're crazy. Like,
Yeah.
it's very vulnerable. No
Well,
one wants.
It takes bottoming out in a way to
Yeah.
to decide I need help,
Yeah. And that's kind of what happened here. I just was out of, I mean, literally the toilet bowl lowest part of my life. And I was like, you know what? I think I need help. So I went to this therapist, this psychiatrist. At the time, it was really hard. I sucked it up and I told her, I was like, I feel like people are watching me sometimes. I feel like I'm in this terrible version of the Truman Show. If you've ever seen the Truman Show with Jim
But
Carrey's,
yeah,
Jim Carrey was born into this kind of reality show where everyone around him is part of this show, and he's his own.
that's classic
He's
paranoia. Yeah,
passenger. And here's the thing: it's like, well, Adam, maybe you're just paranoid because you saw that movie one time and you're just adopting that fantasy as grandiose. And it's like, no, 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 sir. This is how my paranoia. What if they created that movie to make me think
exactly.
that it's just a movie and I'm not being watched? Bam. What do you think about that? Uno reverse, you know? And so, but the only problem is that I kind of had that feeling that I was in this show. I could hear people talking about me. And then that's when this therapist jumped in and she said something that really just blew my mind. She said, when you hear these people whisper, have you ever asked them to repeat themselves? Have you ever said, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that? Which blew my mind. It was such an elegant solution.
It's a good technique. Yeah,
It's really just agency, which is something I had given up on in my life. I was escaping from it probably because of the trauma of being in a toxic family and the guilt of telling my parents to get a divorce and stuff. I was trying to escape my life here. And she went on to say something along the lines of like, I understand this is frightening. Our minds are powerful things, but you should also just try listening to yourself. Stop trying to run away from your thoughts. Are you really that afraid of what your mind has to say?
that's good too. Yeah,
She ended with this banger that changed my life. She says, let's say you're actually in this secret show. Wouldn't it be a better show if you actually did something with your life instead of just sitting on the couch and getting high? Ultimately, it's your show. Why not make the best of it?
good. A wise therapist.
After a lot more sessions, I was able to kind of spin this Truman Show paranoia as realizing it was a fantasy and that these people whispering about me was just my creativity, my brain blaming me for not being happy. Like, hey, do something about this. It was my a manifestation of my depression and shame. And so ever since then, I've treated my life as if it's my show. But yeah, since then, I've always kind of had this motto of my life is my story and I'm the one writing it.
Absolutely. Yeah,
I'm also the one watching it. So why not write the story that I want to see? And that's how I lived my life.
that was a great story.
Thanks so much.
It's funny, when I was 12, my parents came into my bedroom and said, we're going to get a divorce. I pushed my father, and he actually fell into a window and broke it. And
Oh,
I threw a lamp at my mother. And they left. And then they came back again and said, all right, we're not going to get a divorce.
you convinced them?
And then they said, and then here's what's crazy. They empowered me. At 12, I started leading family meetings to try to make us better because my parents were like yours. My father was a merchant marine sailor who became an AT&T pole climber who became an AT&T executive. And my mother was one of the first female Air Force pilots.
Wow.
And so they were both strong people and they just, they could not get along. They could not have been more or less suited for each other. So.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of how they were just not my dad was a firefighter, very and a landscaper. My mom she was very kind of type A. She was a stay-at-home person, but she was really good at like art and decorating and stuff like that. And they just did not get along. One was like Eeyore, the other one was like Chipper, and it just was like, why did you guys
Yeah.
ever
Yeah.
get together? You know,
Yeah, my parents were a disaster. Um,
that's so crazy. Did they meet in like the services? like on a boat or something, or?
No, they met after the services. They met through a friend, and they fell very much in love at the beginning, but that didn't last long. My mother was a much more gifted person. She only finished high school, but she got herself into the Air Force. She had an amazing story in the Air Force. This is 1940, and she was a pilot teaching other pilots, and she took incredible abuse.
Yeah.
And she's not a woman who takes abuse, and so that was sort of the
Wow.
beginning of her standing up to men. And men are assholes. I mean, the men in the Air Force were total assholes. So,
Yeah. No, I'm sure. Especially like a woman coming in teaching and stuff. Yeah.
yes, she had kind of a tragic life, but she taught me a lot about just not taking shit. Um,
Yeah. Totally. She's a badass.
and therapists, I've had 5 therapists and one great one and 4,
I've
so-so
had some
therapists.
interesting
So.
therapists. I will say, so since we're talking about therapists, the best therapists, I've had a good therapist like that. I've had funny therapists that were helped me change my life because I grew up in a depressive household. I kind of grew up with a negative mentality. And my therapist one day, he said, like, Adam, you got shit goggles. And I was like, what did you just say? Is that your professional opinion? And he goes, you know how people have rose colored glasses?
Hmm.
Well, you have the opposite
Yeah,
of that.
yeah.
You have shit goggles.
Hmm.
You see everything through shit.
You see the glass half empty all the time.
Yeah. And the funny thing with that was like, and I was like, that's such a weird thing to say, but you know what? That's true.
That's funny. Well, listen, this was great. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah, me too.
It was pretty far ranging. So
Yeah, yeah. Love chatting with you. Well, it's very nice meeting you. Thank you so much for having me on the show.